Good afternoon. This is Captain Mark Edelson, and on behalf of Captain Chris Kiewis, the Commanding Officer of NAVFAC Southeast, I'd like to welcome all of you to the NAVFAC Southeast rendition of the Land Industry Day. This year held by webinar. We're trying a new technology to avoid the time and expense of traveling everyone to Virginia Beach. We're hoping that through the combination of use of technology and the feedback you're able to do via the chat function, or more precisely the Q&A function on your video screen, we'll still get some of the richness of the interaction between the government and our contractor partners. Admiral Morton, the commander of NAVFAC Atlantic, kicked this off earlier in the week and told you about the responsibility that NAVFAC Atlantic has worldwide for construction and other facility services that NAVFAC does on behalf of the United States Navy, the United States Marine Corps, and our other service, DoD, and federal partners. At NAVFAC Southeast, we're a component of NAVFAC Atlantic, and today I'm going to share with you some of the work that we're doing around NAVFAC Southeast and to some extent what we're going to do in the future. The webinar should be broadcast over your computer speakers right now. There's the video of me, sorry about that, and then the slides that we're presenting. The slides are also available at the link that you can pull down for your reference later. This entire presentation is also being recorded, and once it is available for future viewing, we expect in the next week or so, that will be available through the end of the fiscal year, 30 September. We're also going to be answering questions to the maximum extent possible during the presentation. So on your screen, there's a Q&A function. If you type in your questions, we've got some folks standing by, and if at all possible, we'll answer them during today's session. If it's maybe too complicated or requires some research, all the answers to the questions, both the ones that we answer verbally on the screen and those that we'll do later, will also be available on the website for you to peruse. So we hope you get to as many questions as possible, but there may be some that are later on. I'll be speaking for a large portion of today, and Renee Comfort, our Director of Acquisitions, will also be speaking to you regarding some of the acquisition changes and how we proceed with acquisitions on NAVFAC Southeast. So please feel free to type in questions at any time. Our hope is to be able to answer those after each section of the brief today. Again, we may pick them up at the end or later. If by chance you've dialed into the phone number, which you probably wouldn't be hearing my voice, please hang up and enable the webinar directly on your computer instead. There will be other webinars occurring with our sister FECs, Facilities Engineering Commands, over the next few days, and I certainly encourage you to view those. And also, I highly suggest you go back to Admiral Morton's that was done earlier this week once it becomes available in view. I will probably, and Renee will probably touch on a few of the things that he and his staff at NAVFAC Atlantic mentioned, but that gives you a good sense what they presented of globally how NAVFAC Atlanta is handling acquisitions this year into next year, and some of the emphasis that NAVFAC has on behalf of the Navy. One of the things of great interest, I would imagine, is what our future acquisitions look like. We will be touching certainly on, we'll be talking about the FY12 program to give you a sense of what is happening this year. Again, the fiscal year ends on 30 September, and at least a sense of the FY13 program. That FY13 defense budget is not enacted, so we can only speak in generalities and a few items that the President has given to Congress for enacting in FY13. Beyond that, we cannot speak with any clarity on FY13 and will not. Captain Kiewis cannot be with us today, so again, I am Captain Mark Edelson, the Operations Officer for NAVFAC Southeast, and we'll be talking to you about our program. The mission throughout NAVFAC is to provide facilities for our supported commanders. We are one of the Navy's systems command. responsible primarily for facilities. Some of our sisters commands also handle expeditionary warfare equipment on behalf of the United States Navy. And we provide the full range of facility services. If it touches the land or the built environment, NAVFAC is responsible for that on behalf of the Navy, primarily servicing the Navy commanders who represent each of our regions throughout. So in our case, Captain Kiewitz is also the N4, the Facilities Officer for Commander Navy Region Southeast, also located here aboard Naval Air Station Jacksonville. We also provide engineering and construction services and contracting for the United States Marine Corps as one of the Navy Systems Command. And then along with the Army Corps of Engineers, through a DoD instruction, have divided up the entire globe into who is responsible, either the Army Corps of Engineers or the Naval Facilities Engineering Command, NAVFAC, for military construction, those larger construction projects known as MILCON. So NAVFAC Southeast also performs military constructions on several Air Force bases in our area. As I mentioned, NAVFAC Southeast, lower right-hand corner there, has responsibility for facilities in a portion of CONUS in the continental United States, stretching from Texas down into the Caribbean. We are headquarters at Naval Air Station Jacksonville in Jacksonville, Florida, nearby Naval Station Mayport and Naval Submarine Base Kings Bay just across the border in Georgia. We're a tenant command there, and again, we provide services throughout the areas. You'll see our counterparts at the other areas in continental United States and in EURASA, Europe, Africa, and Southwest Asia. Also, as part of the NAVFAC commands, we have NAVFAC Pacific that handles Hawaii and points west. We also have our two specialty centers, and if you're working in the southeastern United States, one I want to mention in particular was Naval Facilities Engineering Service Center, NAVFAC, who will do some of the specialized design and construction, notably fuel work, some engineering studies, some energy work, and some pier work. So they may also be letting contracts in the otherwise southeast area of responsibility, again, if it's a specialized work. We perform our work through two primary means. We do both in-house and contracted work. I'll talk about that a little later. And we execute that either at the term we use, the Corps, those of us who actually sit at Naval Air Station Jacksonville at the headquarters, or through our various field offices, public works departments, which are located on naval stations, naval installations, and ROINCs, Resident Officer in Charge of Construction, which are located on the Marine Corps and Air Force bases. PWDs in general will let contracts, control forces there, and oversee primarily construction and service contracts aboard their bases and related special areas. For the most part, again generalizing, ROINCs, Resident Officer in Charge of Construction, are post-award, and they will administer construction contracts and service contracts that, again, for the most part, are awarded out of the headquarters. So when you're speaking of NAVFAC Southeast, or any of the NAVFAC components, you're referring to both the headquarters, where Captain Kiewitz sits, and all our various field offices that report to him. We affectionately refer to this as our sand chart, and represents the facilities business that NAVFAC has carried out over the last few years, and what we're projecting into the future. It's a combination of essentially the various types of funding that we've seen. And the United States Navy, and NAVFAC in particular, has been executing a variety of workload over time. We've got our services work that we perform that keeps the base facilities running, referred to either FFC, Facility Service Contracting, or BOSS, Base Operating Services, which is really a roll-up of those individual FFC contracts. our construction workload, mostly familiar as MILCON or military construction, those larger projects, new construction that are authorized by Congress, and SRM, sustainment, restoration, and modernization, which are generally the repair projects that occur on each base to renew the facilities or fix facilities on the bases. Last few years, we've seen some specific funding come down, either the ARA, which is the, we call the stimulus package, that we saw a fair amount of construction over the last couple of years, and then very specific things, the overseas contingency operation and work in Guam, which has seen this spike in the last couple of years. We're expecting, especially in NAVFAC Southeast, to return to a more steady state as we manage the and help manage the 15 installations that Commander Navy Region Southeast has, along with the other bases. As I mentioned, we do work by two means, and for just about every aspect of work, some of it is done in-house by civil servants of the U.S. government, and others we contract. So you'll see it both ways, depending on the specific type of work, the specialties required, and certainly the scale of that work. The work will either be performed in-house or by contract. I suspect you're most interested in the contracted work. In-house might be some design work that we do in-house to keep our technical skills up. Maybe some facilities maintenance on individual bases. Maybe a small amount of construction, usually just over maintenance work. And also could be some environmental services, either handling hazardous material, hazardous waste, or by doing NEPA studies or other environmental studies. This is our 12 workload. Of course, we're almost at the end of 12. About $1.5 billion in one form or another. Certainly the largest single component of that is our construction contracting and the oversight of that. We expect that to be fairly steady, both from FY12 to FY13, around $800 million. And again, that will ebb and flow depending on what the Navy and our sister services need at one point. It may be heavy work in Texas at one point, and a year or two later, although the volume of business may stay similar, it might be flowing to South Carolina to maybe one of the Marine Corps bases, so that will shift around. And the type of work will change over time, depending on new platforms possibly the Navy's rolling out, emphasis on barracks revitalization. So although numbers may stay the same at the macro level, the specific projects certainly will change, and even the area that we're constructing will change. I wanted to speak for a moment about design in place, just because the United States Navy does use a different definition than common. So if you asked somebody at NAVFAC how much design we do, we'd say around $600 million a year. That actually represents the amount of construction that we're designing for. Or a typical number would be about $50 million a year in design work we do, which is a leading indicator, of course, for the construction that would follow typically a year or two later. Contingency engineering is that which we do on behalf of our combatant commanders, primarily for Naval Facilities Engineering Command Southeast is SOUTHCOM, responsible for the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. On behalf of SOUTHCOM, we do most of the construction work in the Caribbean. I'll speak of that a little later. Public Works is what keeps our bases, again, primarily Navy bases, running day to day. It's the maintenance work, the unsung work that's occurring, and a portion of that is done by our in-house forces. In NAVFAC Southeast, we do a lot of that by contract, either, again, that FSC work or the larger BOSS contracts that are a combination of FSC. I'll talk about that certainly a little bit more. We also buy utilities on behalf of our bases and supply those through our Navy Working Capital Fund, revolving fund. Essentially, the commander of the base pays NAVFAC, and NAVFAC, after buying on the market, provides utility services. So that's not utilities construction work in that about $270 million you see there. We also run the fleet of vehicles for our various bases. Most acquisition is via the General Services Administration, GSA, so rarely will you see actually contracting for vehicles. Again, there's always some exceptions where maybe a bus contract is needed, a long-haul trucking contract is needed. Environmental, again, NAVFAC is a full-service facilities organization. So besides constructing the work, we are protecting the facilities and that environment that the individual base commanding officers are responsible for. So that's both the environmental services and any cleanup and the planning studies associated with it. We'll talk a little bit more about specific contracting. In asset management, often we think of that as the planning side of NAVFAC, so preparing several years out for what we'll eventually design and what then we'll eventually construct. So that's helping our supported commanders decide what the requirements are, prioritize those correctly. That is done under asset management planning. We also have a fairly active real estate activity here in the southeastern United States in an attempt to preserve compatible land use around our station. So you will see that on behalf of the Navy, NAVFAC Southeast is purchasing some land or rights in land in real estate to protect those Navy missions. We have about 90 airfields in the NAVFAC Southeast AO, so we want to protect our ability to fly, and that's the real estate actions that we see. So again, about $1.5 billion a year spread amongst several different things. The vast majority of it in construction, both large projects, $30, $40 million, but plenty of medium and small work as well that we're eager to have your participation in. And I will mention certainly at the end also, but virtually all of that is advertised on FedBizOps. So it's a website established by the U.S. government to view solicitations and our request for proposals. So that's the place to go and monitor on a frequent basis, ensure that you have the latest on actual requests for proposals coming up rather than the generalities I have to speak to today. I'd like to talk a little bit more about our AOR, Area of Responsibility, where Captain Kiewist delivers those facility services. Again, throughout the southeastern United States, I will note the hot and humid area of the U.S. It's hard on facilities, it's hard on our utility bill, so we think about that frequently in our design and construction. We have, for the most part, on the eastern seaboard there, fleet bases, the Key West, Jacksonville, Mayport, Kings Bay, where the U.S. Navy has sea assets base that deploy from those bases. We're responsible for keeping those home ports ready for training and for when the ships and planes and submarines come back to home port, that they've got a place to call home and that their families can stay in relative comfort while their loved ones are away. Along the Gulf Coast and into Texas, we have the United States Navy's and the other services' main air training bases. So many primary airfields at those stations, and then runways, landing strips that are offset from those bases so our pilots can practice training both the primary training when they're getting their initial flight qualifications and up through their platforms learning to fly jet aircraft or rotary wing aircraft, helicopters. That would take place at Kingsville, Texas, Corpus Christi, Texas, up in Meridian, Mississippi, and certainly Pensacola and Whiting Field in Florida. We have two bases that are classified as reserve bases in the Southeast. These do receive a slightly different appropriation than our other bases do. That's Joint Reserve Base Fort Worth and Joint Reserve Base New Orleans. So the United States Navy is the caretaker for those bases, although you will find Air Force unit, Marine Corps units on those as well. Again, both of those are airfields. We are responsible for the Air Force bases at Keesler, which is serviced out of Gulfport, and at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina that we service out of the Joint Base at Charleston. Again, another Joint Base where we're responsible for the military construction that's occurring there, be it Air Force funded or Navy funded. We've got the home of the Seabees in Gulfport, Mississippi. Is another one of the fleet bases, and then we're responsible for Marine Corps bases in Georgia and South Carolina. That would be the Marine Corps Logistics Base at Albany, and then both their training base at Parris Island and the Marine Corps Air Station at Beaufort. Our office for those two bases and the hospital at Beaufort is located aboard Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort. Way to the south, we've got Naval Station Guantanamo Bay. We're responsible again for the facilities there. I would note in particular that that's a self-sustaining base. We generate our own power and water there, and then of course keep the facilities going and build any new facilities. I will talk a little later, but as I mentioned, we are responsible for construction throughout the Caribbean on behalf of Southcom and a few others. Right now we have a fully staffed office at Haiti. It's a ROINC office, overseeing about $38 million of construction work that is recovery from the 2010 earthquake, helping the Haitians prepare for the next one. So we're building emergency operations centers there, disaster relief warehouses, and a few other things. So again, a wide span of control at these 15 public works departments, 5 other ROINCs, and then of course, as I mentioned, they serve their assorted sites. Briefly, in case you hear the terms, we have this built up for command and control reasons into 3 integrated product teams. South Atlantic, which handles primarily those bases, they're on the eastern seaboard of Florida. The Gulf Coast ones, which are primarily those air training bases around on the Gulf Coast. And South Central, affectionately referred to the cats and dogs, but it's the Air Force, the Marine Corps work, and those joint reserve bases. So work, again, will ebb and flow amongst them. We will use the teams as they've got capacity, but for command and control functions, they're divided up that way. I spoke a little bit about the scheme of maneuver we use for managing the work. I will talk a little bit more about each of the what we refer to as business lines. Certainly, there's ebb and flow across those, but capital improvements, you can think of construction, public works as maintenance. We have the functions that keep the command running, our acquisition, our money management. The contingency engineering is specifically for hurricane relief or other natural disasters, natural or man-made disasters. We also manage some of the Caribbean work from that. Environmental, as you would imagine. And then asset management handles both, or all 3, our planning, the inventorying of our facilities and knowing what condition they are in, and then that real estate procurement. I'd like to move on to the largest portion of our organization, certainly by dollar value, which is capital improvements. Again, think construction, think the standard civil engineering at this point, but it's much more than that. For organization, we think of it as 3 different aspects, which is design, so professional services, registered engineers and architects. We have them on staff, and we do some design on staff in-house forces, and then contract out a large portion of that. Again, to the tune of about $50 million a year in design services that may be full designs, full plan specs, have our A&E partners prepare the request for a proposal that is ready to go on the street, or they may take it to some lesser degree of design, and we'll talk about that a little later, a request for proposal that would then end up in a design build contract rather than a design bid build with full plan. So folks can handle anything from underground utilities to vertical structures, renovations of hangars, blast design, waterfront facilities, certainly airfield construction. And all that then turns into our construction group. which the contracts are let both here at NAVFAC Southeast headquarters. Typically the larger ones, above $4 million, are done out of the headquarters, and they can be done in several different ways. You can design, bid, build, where you might partner with a designer, or in the field, our Public Works Department, and to a lesser extent, our ROINC offices have local tools for acquisition of the, again, generally smaller projects. And unlike some of our counterparts in the other services, NAVFAC does that full range of construction. So the new facilities, brand new hangar, extension of runways, new power plants are done, but also the repair projects, our older facilities, rehabbing waterfront structures, refinishing a gym floor, all is out of NAVFAC Southeast, and can be done either from the headquarters or from one of our field offices. We certainly also oversee the post-construction award services, where we're working with our A&E to help answer questions during the construction process. We also do a small amount of technical services, studies on specific issues that may lead into a more detailed design and a construction project in the future. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about our FY12 work and just highlight a few items on that and what we see coming on the FY13. For your reference, if you're seeing this on the planned award date, it has an actual date there in that far right column. It is awarded. If not, it's got a projected award date. I think all the FY12 work is on the street and will be awarded by the end of the fiscal year. So ability to play in those projects is probably pretty minimal at this point. Certainly if you're a subcontractor, a designer, a supplier, still opportunity, but for the most part to be the prime contractor on it, we are well along in the acquisition process on that. And then on the FY13, again, not enacted by Congress. These are the military construction projects that the President has submitted to Congress, so there's a reasonable chance they will occur. Also, I will caveat that design level, the acquisition method, the acquisition tool could change prior to putting these on the street. So things can change. The project dollar amount is the authorized amount that has gone to Congress, certainly not the government estimate for these. So for ease, my ease, if nothing else, these are divided by those integrated product teams that I mentioned, and this is South Atlantic at Eastern Seaboard. You will see in FY12 we've got some work for new weapons programs or systems acquisition. That is one of the things you can watch for, that pending construction. If the United States Navy or the Marine Corps is adopting a new platform, maybe a new UAV, a new aircraft, a new ship type, a new class of submarines, that there may in fact be an associated construction tail with that. So that would be, in this case, the BAMS P-8A, new maritime dominance aircraft. So that would be something to look for in the future. We also have an active program at Sub-Base Kings Bay. So a variety of work occurring at Kings Bay now and into at least the near future. Another very interesting one, we, as I mentioned, have a responsibility for naval stations with Guantanamo Bay. Certainly a different environment. Of course, everything has to be imported there, both labor and materials and technical knowledge. So if you're adept at that, I would certainly encourage you to watch for projects being advertised for Guantanamo Bay. You see here one housing project that is being bid out in FY12. The FY13 outlook for South Atlantic, again, primarily, or just in this case, the military construction work. That's, again, continuing that BAMS program, one of the Navy's new UAVs here at Naval Air Station Jacksonville. You'll be seeing that one come up, as well as a full fuel pier down at Gitmo. I would note to you on that one that at least as of now, we plan to do those as standalone construction contracts. So as Renee will talk about a little later, certainly a chance for contractors to compete on those standalone projects. And because we're the United States Navy, we'll repeat that information to make sure you saw it. But these are the same projects. And then I will note one more that we put in there. This is not a military construction project, so it's not as firm in the program, but a large construction project at Naval Air Station Jacksonville, where we are going to be reworking the primary airfield here at NAS Jacksonville, and also doing some lighting upgrades at the same time. So one that you may want to keep an eye on if you're in the horizontal business, certainly. So moving to the Gulf Coast group, again, these are primarily the air stations and Naval Construction Battalion Center at Gulfport along the Gulf Coast. In FY12, all of these are awarded, but they give you a sense of the range of facilities that we do for the Navy and others. So we've got airfield-related work at Whiting Field. One that is actually done by the Corps of Engineers. I note at our Navy EOD school in Eglin, that's one of their responsibilities. So a schoolhouse, we certainly do those as well. And then our Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, the medical command for the Navy, also has an active program of clinics and hospitals, as do their counterparts in the Air Force. So you'll see some health facilities. This is a health clinic at Gulfport that was recently awarded. And you'll see we use a variety of different acquisition tools there. There are on those three different contracts. So in the future, in the Gulf Coast, again, a range of things. And I'll talk more about air conditioning and energy projects later. But that is the sole source, I will note. In general, projects smaller than $4 million, we make a acquisition decision on a case-by-case basis. But in general, those under $4 million will be sole source to a 8A contractor. Dining facility at Meridian. I want to note that one in particular. That is the seed project on the Gulf Coast Medium Multiple Award Construction Contract, MAC. So you will certainly want to be watching for any that are seed projects on MACs. MACs are multi-year contracts, or they can be at the government's decision, awarded to several contractors who then compete for task orders on future work. So typically, 5 contractors will be selected for a MAC, and then they will compete on subsequent work. That allows us to have a known group of contractors. So certainly any seed project for a new MAC you want to pay particular attention to, and may consider putting it in a submission for those MACs. Again, that are typically 2-step ones, and I'll let Renee talk more on that. Down at Corpus Christi, Texas, 2 projects we're doing for the U.S. Army there. They have an extremely large industrial facility there that takes some specialized knowledge to work there and allow their operations to keep going. But 2 large projects happening this coming year, we hope, at Corpus Christi. Both of those right now are slated to go out as standalone construction contracts. Both of them design, bid, build, but 2 different methods. One, when you see RFP LP, it's actually low price, technically acceptable. Please don't confuse that with the old bidding methodology. It is still a source selection process. And the other one, a best value source selection. But as of now, those are intended to go out as standalone construction contracts. So you may, if you're in that business, pay particular attention to those. And there we have them again. Beautiful rendering. You can look at it at your leisure. So now moving to South Central, these are generally in these bases with the exception of Fort Worth and New Orleans. The larger contracts, because for the Marine Corps and certainly for the Air Force, we are doing the military construction program for them. So you see these spread out a few different bases, and most of these are awarded right now, and that Charleston project will be awarded very soon also. We've moved through the acquisition process on those to give you some sense of the work. And you'll see there the mix between best value source selection and low price technically acceptable. All right, so this is the South Central work for the next year. I certainly would be interested in this one, multiple military construction projects here. Beaufort in particular, a lot of work in that lowland area, much of it in preparation for the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35, that will be rolled out to Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort. I wanted to note that, let me make sure I get these right, the ground support equipment shop is scheduled to be the seed on the South Carolina-Georgia medium back, and then the aircraft maintenance hangar that's down at P465 at the bottom is a North Florida, South Georgia MAC. I did want to mention on the terminology we use, sometimes you'll hear the large MAC or the large design contract. That really means unrestricted. We tend to put the larger projects on it, but by no means is it restricted to large businesses. It is actually unrestricted. And the term small may or may not be used if somebody's using it inaccurately. It may not mean reserved for small business. It may just mean it's tended for either smaller design work or smaller construction projects. There are some that are in fact set aside for an 8A group of contractors and an 8A contract or small business. One of the flavors of small business, small disadvantage, just small business, service disabled, some of the other ones. So please check more carefully. Don't just read the title if you see small or large mentioned in the title for an RFP or a contract. So here we are at, again, some of the highlights for the South Central ones. I'm particularly interested to see how our contractors do on these transparent palm trees that we're evidently specifying for this clinic. That's a joke, by the way, if it didn't come through as such, because I'm staring at a little backlight camera and trying to talk intelligently to you at the same time and hopefully be helpful. So I had mentioned before our Caribbean work. Sometimes referred to as contingency engineering because then that's how we manage it here. It is not by any means necessarily in a contingency. It is more the Caribbean work. These tend to be smaller contracts, generally less than $1 million, spread out on a variety of Caribbean islands. At last count, we have construction projects going on 7 different islands, and generally I mean 7 different nations. So if that type of work interests you, you've got some skill set at that, I'd certainly ask you to keep an eye out. Here are 3 that we have awarded. And again, they tend to be fairly simple structures, further from our logistics pipelines than normal. So it takes a certain skill to be able to put these up. You'll see in general a lot of pre-engineered buildings and also some concrete structures out there as well that can survive. Reasonably decent, although not large dollar value in the looking at the FY13 program. Again, these are not military construction projects, so not necessarily as firm as some of the ones I showed you earlier, but they're similar to certainly what we've done in the past and what we're expecting to do in the future. The program is merely for our categorization. HA refers to humanitarian assistance, CN to narcotics, and it's the reason that our customer, in this case, U.S. Southern Command, would probably be doing those projects. So again, watch for those if you're interested in that type. We have not decided on the method to use on those, and that's why I have not shown it here, whether it be an RFP, whether it be a MAC contract, or a small business set-aside, whatever will work best. Again, we do those on a case-by-case basis. My little clicker advances us. So here's what you want to pay attention to. I spoke, of course, in general and did not give you specific dates. NAVFAC has decided to encourage our contractor partners to know what is going on, to look at our public portal where we list basically this information. The military construction, once the President submitted it, is generally a public record. So to make it easier, we have posted that. And at occasion, depending on how advanced the program is, there also may be some information on other contracts, construction in particular, but other contracts there. So I'd encourage you to look at that. It is updated on a fairly frequent basis, so check back there. And then also, there's another link there on the portal for solicitations. And I'm sure we have somewhere in here, Fed Biz Ops, again, where the actual RFPs and the notices that an RFP is coming is posted. So please, your business development folks should check that on a regular basis. So I hope that introduction to our business, and particularly our larger construction projects, was useful. I would ask you to keep sending in the questions, and we will get to those. Do we have any now? Or?
We have a list of questions right now with 4 million responses, and we'll be able to address them at the end of the presentation.
Excellent. So we will be doing those, the ones we can, a little later on. So those, I will talk about some of those others, as we mentioned, business lines, the other type of work we do shortly. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Renee Comfort, our Director of Acquisitions, to talk about our acquisition process and some of our typical approaches. Again, I mentioned that these are in general. They are typical. By no means is this how it's done each and every time. If I can leave you with one piece of advice at this point, read the solicitation and answer the questions given in that. That's what the government wants. And if you want to play, you've got to read it and respond accordingly. Renee, if you're ready, I'd like to turn it over to you, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Renee Comfort. I'm Chief of Contracts for NAVFAC Southeast. I'm happy to be here today. I'm glad to be able to speak to you about some of the things that we're doing in our program for the acquisition and procurement processes. I have 3 slides today. One is the acquisition approach. It's basically talking about the types of contracts that we're using. The second one is the items of interest and recent issues that have come up with the DoD initiatives and that type of thing. So I think the second slide will be extremely valuable to you. The acquisition strategy is the third slide, and that talks about how we get from the initial identification of a project through what type of acquisition tool that we're going to use. And hopefully maybe some of the discussion that I have on slide 3 will answer some of the questions that I'm already seeing come up. So we'll start with slide, let me see if I can work this. They left me with the controller. Okay, so this first slide talks about the types of contracts that we use and how we develop our contracts. One of the things that I want to mention early on about our contract structure is in many of these types of contracts, we put wording in there that allows us to use any one of these contracts across our entire AOR. That provides us with a better, useful tool in our toolbox. It gives us the agility to meet our supported commanders' requirements as fast as possible and still being able to use competition as much as possible. The first one, of course, is full and open competition. Captain Edelson did talk a little bit about that. Full and open competition is basically any contract above $50 million that we put out. However, NAVFAC Southeast looks from about $30 million upwards to determine where the best project is for full and open competition. Typically, that would be done in a best value source selection process. If it is a design bid build, we may put that out as an LPTA, low price technically acceptable. The second set of tools is the set-asides for small business. Typically, those are under $15 million. We look to a variety of small business opportunities. We go through the market research to determine which are the appropriate tools to use when reaching any one of our small business or subsets. The third one is the multiple award construction contracts. There's 3 listed there. We have small business max, 8A max, and unrestricted max. Each one of those is determined based on the information that we have of projects that are coming in the future, anywhere from 3 to 5 years out. Before we make any decision on a MAC contract, we always try to get a list of what we expect to put on that MAC to ensure that we're not exercising contracts for a large MAC when in fact we don't put hardly any business on it. We do this through the market research. We put that out on FedBizOps, and we hope that our folks the contractors will come in and respond to those market research questions so that we can pick the right group to set aside for the multiple award, or whether it should be unrestricted and full and open. Our 8A max are typically throughout various locations in our AOR where we have many MAC contractors where there's competition and where the small business allows us to use those 8As in the competition for the MAX. The MAC contracts also are negotiated task order by task order. So the first project would be a seed project. Those are the ones that Kat Mendelson spoke about earlier. So you want to watch the seed projects, and again, as he spoke of, respond thoroughly to the RFPs. The next is IDIQ, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity AE contracts. Those are typical AE contracts, planning contracts, design contracts, building RFP type contracts. We've used those, so we have the tool available at any time that we need scopes of work completed, and we use that through task orders, which are negotiated task order by task order. We also have IDIQ construction contracts, as shown there, for paving, fencing, and that type of thing at individual locations where we know there's going to be an inordinate amount of paving or roofing. Finally, the facility support service contracts provide for our maintenance, custodial, grounds, facility type work. There's 2 types. We call the FSC service contracts and the BOSS contracts. Typically, a BOSS contract is 3 annexes or more, and then it becomes a base operating support contract. All those contracts are completed under our FSC support group here in the Corps and in the FAC here in Jacksonville. The reason why we do that is for consistency, to make sure that we're getting lessons learned and that we don't exercise you in any way so that it's different. We want to be consistent. Okay, items of interest. I think this is the important information that I want to get out to you. DoD initiatives, they started in 2010, and we've had some various information put out about that, and we've had some guidance and direction on how to use this policy. First, of course, is encouraging competition. It's competition, competition, competition. If you heard Patty Callahan speak at the Atlantic Symposium, it was the same thing. We do want to have a full and open competition in any way that we can, or at least allow for competition. So to that end, I just want to make a note at this point, when you see overly restrictive scopes of work or overly restrictive RFPs with factors that you believe require too much, please notify the contracting officer, because we may want to revisit that to open up competition as much as possible. Past performance, we're getting into now the new initiatives for the DoD selection guide. And there's 2 or 3 really important things to talk about here. The first is the change in terminology in our source selection. The second is how we handle past performance. And the third is discussions. As far as the terminology goes, we used to call technical factors, the technical factors in the RFP, those are now called non-price factors. So instead of hearing the term technical, you'll hear non-price. There's new adjectival ratings. The adjectival ratings are outstanding, good, acceptable, marginal, and unacceptable. We have found over DoD we are been inconsistent. At NAVFAC may use one set of terms and another organization may use another. So DoD is trying to ensure that there's a good, clear consistency across all the organizations that makes it easier for you. Non-price factors we typically have used as approximately equal, so that all of the technical factors are approximately equal to price. What we have changed now with the DoD initiatives is that past performance is treated differently. Past performance is now a separate evaluation. The evaluation looks at 2 things. It looks at one, the relevancy of the past performance, as well as the risk of performing for that particular scope of work or contract. In addition to that, the past performance ratings terms have now changed. Where they used to be the same as all the other technical factors, they now are substantial confidence, satisfactory confidence, limited confidence, no confidence, and unknown, which is now the new term for a neutral or no rating technical factor, adjectival rating. So when we would be giving you a debrief on a source selection, we may tell you that overall your technical factors were outstanding with a confidence level of substantial confidence. In the past, we used to say your overall is an acceptable or outstanding, and that would include past performance. So that's a big change. And as we read further, I'm going to talk a little bit about the PPQs and past performance. That's going to be so much more important. The third thing is discussions. In the DoD initiatives and the information provided for the source selections, it talks about discussions and that rarely would we make an award without discussions. It says that, and we do enter into discussions where necessary, but we don't conduct discussions just to conduct discussions. We'll always make sure that they're meaningful discussions. We understand it's not only time-consuming for us, but it's time-consuming and costly for you. So we want to do the right thing every time we enter into a source selection. The one thing that Kat Medelson did mention that I wanted to stress again is please read your RFPs. It's very important that you understand what we're asking for. Put in RFIs if you don't, but read the entire request for proposal. Understand what relevancy means. If it says you have to have approximately 7 years, try to get your contracts within 7 years. If it doesn't have to be, it has to be relevant in a certain manner of a certain type of building or type of work. Make sure that you address those specifically. The more specifically you get, the easier it is for us to evaluate that information, and the easier it is for us to get to a fair and reasonable award. We see a lot of times where just one word may be missed, and in that case, you're either deficient or we're going to have to go back into discussions to make you ready to be awarded. So please read that. Read the technical specs. What are we asking you to do? Make sure that your technical approaches define what we're asking you to do and to really tell us what you intend to do. Also, you'll notice that in the source selection factors in our AOR, as well as all of NAVFAC, we've tried to become consistent and encourage a collaborative partnership with contractors. So for that reason, we've standardized the design build factors. So whenever you see a design-build factor, design-build contract RFP on the street, you should always see a phase 1, which would include technical approach, experience, and past performance. And then in phase 2, you would see safety, a technical solution, energy and sustainability, and small business if that's applicable. So those shouldn't change. And if they need to be changed, that requires a waiver that goes up through ESH3 for approval. So if you see any changes and you question them, or you're not you don't understand why in this particular project we would change them, please let your contracting officer know, and again, we'll verify that there is truly a need for whatever we're asking for. The next thing that I want to go over real quickly is past performance questionnaires and CCAS, 8CAS, and CPARs. We've worked real hard to clean up our late or delayed past performance backlog. We continue to put senior level emphasis on that, and we are reducing that backlog because we understand how important it is that you get the performance evaluation after you perform the services. We want to make sure that you have that. PPQs. PPQs were developed in coordination and collaboration with Army Corps of Engineers and Atlantic in order to develop something that is consistent so that you know what you're looking at every time that you see an RFP. These are, what you can do with these are send these to your supported command, or sorry, your client, and ask them to fill out a PPQ about the project that you have worked on. They can return that PPQ to you, and you in turn can include that PPQ into your proposal. The thing that's changed a little bit is what we found is in this first initial change to policy, what we found is there was some conflicting information put out between what was in the PPQ and what may have been in CPARs. So we revisited that on how we can make sure that we're consistent with your evaluation. The process now is that if you have a CPARs evaluation in the system that's less than 1 year old on the projects that you submit, we will only look at that CPARs. So you do not need to go out and get a PPQ and ask a contracting officer to fill that out. We prefer to use the CPARs that's in the system. So I hope that that will help you and reduce the level of effort on your part on our RFPs. I wanted to mention also a couple things about small business. You may have seen, of course, in accordance with FAR 19, we're required after we make a selection and a source selection process to provide the offers the notification of what small business will be awarded the contract. This gives them enough time, gives the offers enough time to come back and discuss whether or not that the successful offer is indeed small business. It's a protest to the Small Business Administration. We have found in a few cases where there have been protests, and during those protests we found that they were not small business. Typically what is happening is the policies are changing, the rules are changing, it's self-certification, something may happen. So we then have to, they usually just remove themselves from the competition, and then we go determine who the next successful offer will be. So that's another delay in time. If we're ready for award and we find that our successful awardee is in small business, we have to go through the 30-day wait so the Small Business Administration can make a determination, get back to us, and then we have to go back into the source selection process. So that is another reason why it seems like a long time goes between the time you submit your proposals and we actually make an award. The other thing that's very important is we consistently want to help our small businesses wherever possible. And in this case, what the DoD is doing is suggesting and requiring us to make every effort to pay our invoices within 15 days. That is our goal. 30 days still is the cutoff for prompt payment, but hopefully these small businesses will be receiving their cash flows quicker than the 30-day time period. So that's important. Finally, FSC contracts. A couple things that I wanted to mention about FSC contracts. We've talked about BOSS contracts being 3 annexes, and we've talked about the other service contracts. But a couple of things that we need to address here is peer reviews. We have peer reviews for construction and service contracts at different dollar values. So at $50 million, it could be at my level. At $250 million, it could be at DASN level. Just in the pre-award process, between between RFP and award, we have 3 peer review processes going on. We have one before the solicitation is issued. We have one before we go into discussions, and then we have one before we make an award. So you will see, again, there's a slowdown, and there's this process that's happening behind the scenes that you don't know about. BOSS contract audits are also a significant issue right now. We will be doing local audits. There will be many audits coming from various directions to make sure that we are administering these big contracts well, and that we are putting the right work on the contracts, and that we have, again, resulting in competition, make sure that the right work is going to the right areas. Next slide. This slide talks about the way we go from an initial project thought to what project tool that we will use to finish the project. We start with a strategy for design. Right now, it is NAVFAC Southeast policy to look first to determine whether we have the in-house capacity to develop an RFP, and if not, then we have to go out and contract to have the RFP developed. This provides us with the opportunity to have a consistency across our RFPs, as well as to develop our in-house staff and keep them on target as well. Then we go into looking at our various construction acquisition strategies. These are the basic guidelines. These are where we would go first when we're contemplating any project. I've talked a little bit about them. The policy at NAVFAC is over $50 million of standalone, full and open projects. As I said before, typically in NAVFAC Southeast, we make that cut at about $30 million, and we look to see what's the smartest solution for us as far as competition at $30 million. The $20 to $50 million consideration is typically going to an unrestricted MAC or a standalone contract. The MAC is our tool in which to quickly go to award with 5 or 6 very good contractors that have already been vetted through the system. So the MACs provide us the opportunity for almost like a mini source selection, and it really does make our selection process go faster so that we can meet our supported commanders' requirements. Less than $20 million consideration for MAC applicability, especially small business MACs. At $20 million, we start looking at what are those projects that would be better in the smaller medium MAC range, mini MAC range versus the large unrestricted MACs. And then a small business set-asides are typically considered at less than $15 million. One of the things I want to mention here about MACs is you'll often see that MAC scopes of work, they'll discuss all of the areas of responsibility within NAVFAC Southeast. But the other thing is the task order limits may be different. We may have a mini MAC that is $4 million to $15 million. We may have a medium MAC that's $4 million to $20 million. And again, it goes back to what's the right answer for the particular IPT that this MAC is developed for. What is the work we're expecting on it down the road? Do we need 2, a mini MAC and a medium MAC and a large MAC? And how do we go about defining what's the best scenario so that we're always ready to award a contract for our supported commanders? Typically, we have 1 large MAC per IPT, and we have a variation of mini and medium MACs in the IPTs as well. Once we know that the program is authorized, it becomes a little more tactical, and we start looking at the project more specifically from the complexity the client desires, permitting requirements, and any need for in-house design experience. These things are just typical of the actual project that we're looking at, such as client desires. In some cases, we have clients that do not want us to go through any type of low price, technically acceptable. They want us to do best value, or vice versa. They want everything design, build, and then go through a source selection process. So we have to tailor what we feel is the right procurement and acquisition plan to the customer's desires as well. Permitting requirements could go anything from real estate to environmental requirements and needs. So that's where we get down to looking at it more specifically on what do we need to get to an award. And then the variations in the acquisition strategy include all of the things that I've pretty much discussed in other areas. Our small business goals, are we meeting them? Are we exceeding them? Where can we better use a project to meet our goals? A MAC capacity and scope is also another issue. You'll notice we have a great number of MACs out on the street right now. That's because we had an inordinate amount of work last year. We used a lot of our capacity up, so we have to rebuild our toolbox. So I know you'll be seeing a lot of phase 2s coming out. They may come out close to the same time. If you do see that and the contractors are under stress because you've got 5 offers to put in and they're all due on the same day, please let us know that. We will coordinate as best we can, and as time allows for us to do that. The MAC capacity should be, once our toolbox is back full up, we should be able to see MACs come out a little less frequently as they have been coming out, which I want to say we probably have 5 or 6 out there right now, so it's a lot of work. And then again, we talked about the appropriate use of LPTAs on some design bid build projects. You'll see we started using more LPTAs than in the past, and this has been a meaningful way for us to get to award faster with a low-price, technically acceptable contractor without putting more work on a contractor to provide a full proposal and then the additional months that it takes to get us to award. Because what we do in a source selection, we look at every page of every proposal up to whatever the page limit is. And it's very time-consuming. We're reaching inordinate numbers of proposals, from 30 to 50 or more proposals on some of these acquisitions, and it's extremely time-consuming, but we do want to read every single one. We want to be fair. We want to be equitable when we're making these decisions. So LPTA just gets us there a little bit faster and easier. So that's all I have. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll turn it over to Captain Edelson.
Renee, thank you very much. I'm going to continue with the brief, but let me take off a moment on an admin note. Please keep the questions coming. We have many in, and we're going to answer as many as possible today, and then many more will be available later on along with the recording. If you're sending in your questions, please make sure you've selected Send to Host and Panelists to allow a few more people here to see that question and be able to prepare the answer. So let me take a couple questions that I've gotten during my break at least. There appears to be no opportunities in your FY12-13 MILCON program for an A&Es that do not have IDIQ design contracts to develop RFPs or plans and specs or part of an existing MAC. Do you see this trend changing? I'd say there are many opportunities for our A&E partners out there, certainly to compete for the IDIQ contracts, also to partner with our both standalone construction contractors, standalone construction contract, those contractors for design build, and then to be also part of any particular task order that's going out design build. You can partner with one of the construction firms. And we certainly have awarded some standalone design projects. I would note in particular a very large MILCON project in Charleston was a standalone design contract. So there are opportunities out there. FY13 South Central MILCON workload, the aircraft maintenance hangar at Beaufort, is the acquisition tool for this procurement an existing unrestricted MAC? If not, what is the proposed MAC for this procurement? It is not an existing MAC. In fact, it's the seed project for a new MAC R1260, which is currently under phase 1 evaluation. So we've gotten the wide scope of proposals in, and we're evaluating those to see which ones are technically acceptable. This is an unrestricted MAC, but we have, again, already received proposals on it. FY13 South Central MILCON workload. We assume Project P470, the visitors' quarters at New Orleans, and the commercial vehicle inspection site at Fort Worth were issued as task orders to the MAC for Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. P470, the visitors' quarters, is the seed project on the South Texas MAC and is a small business set-aside. That's R0778. P047 is a seed for the Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi medium MACs, which is a small business set-aside currently in phase 1 evaluation. That solicitation is R1759. And a question about our Caribbean work, if it is limited to 8A MACs, and no, it is not. We have done the Caribbean work through a variety of methods. So I hope that helps, and again, we'll have more coming in shortly. So we talked a little bit about construction work, at least how we divide it up. I'm going to talk about our public works business line that has work that includes construction, but so much more. Again, this is how we operate the bases. We think of it in 4 different aspects. We've got the facilities maintenance and sustainment. That's really our in-house workforce. About 600, what we generally call blue collar in the command, that does maintenance work on the bases. And then FMFS, that's the facility service contracting. So our FSC and BOSS work, base operating services, is done from there. BSV&E, which provides transportation, and then our utilities and energy management, with both, which maintains our utility systems on the bases for the most part. Some of those have been privatized. And then also is the provider of the utility from where it comes in the base. So we have some work there, facilities projects. I'm not going to go into any more depth, but these are small projects that directly support this command, construction projects of some sort. Say those are almost small, always set aside. FSC contracting, which is a big workload around here. Many of our bases are BOSS bases in the Southeast. I would mention Kings Bay, Mayport, and Jacksonville. Orlando, Naval Support Activity Orlando is a BOSS base, so we have a contract that provides virtually all services there. Utilities projects, we've got a reasonably robust system throughout the Southeast, maintaining those 15 bases utility systems. So high voltage work there, water systems, wastewater treatment plant. And then the energy program, which if you saw it looks like construction, but one of the larger programs in the United States Navy right now and the Marine Corps, and I will talk about in some more depth. So one key thing on the facility support contracts, those tend to be continuing services. So although we may not have forecasts behind this next year, FY13, there's at least a reasonable assumption that if we're collecting trash now at Gulfport, we will probably be collecting trash at Gulfport in the future. If there's custodial work at a base now, there'll be custodial bases work in the future. So certainly if you're in that type of business, you want to be looking ahead a couple of years. Those are typically, it changes, but typically 5-year contracts. And here are some of the ones coming up. And it is a great variety of services. So if you do anything that helps us maintain and run an installation, please keep your lookout for those FedVid ops. And I wanted to mention there's often 3 steps in that RFP. So we may put out a market research looking for what firms might be interested in such and such type of acquisition, gauging maybe if a small business set-aside is appropriate, if we have people technically competent to do the work in that particular area. Then there's a pre-solicitation notification, typically 14 days in advance of the actual solicitation, and to get your team ready at that point. You'll know that something is firmed up. And then the request for proposal, the actual RFP that comes up. And again, typically those are out there for 30 days before your package is due into the government. So as you can see here, a wide variety of services, everything from the bottom there, the BOSS contract for Whiting Field, which virtually runs the base there, to a much smaller pool maintenance contract at Pensacola. We need to collect the trash on all the bases. There we're at the Stennis Space Center, actually a NASA facility near Gulfport, Mississippi, where we're doing some generator maintenance. So keep your eye out for those. In general, these are small business set aside, so if you're getting into the business, those are ones to look for. So look out a little further on those FSC contracts because they tend to be continuing services, and again, a wide variety of these. A very large one coming up that I would encourage your participation on is that BOSS contract at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Again, very interesting workforce. You're running everything down there. That's one of the places the Navy still has direct control of housing that we worry about down there. So an interesting place to work, along with the utilities there. We've got custodial services there at the Marine Corps bases. Again, typically 5 years, and the contracting is done a little differently than the construction. Forward. Some facilities, utilities work rather. So again, our program, around $20 to $30 million a year. Tends to be more technical, maybe some environmental permits needed as well, but all the various utility systems NAVFAC is responsible for. Wastewater, water, high voltage electrical, we have some steam systems, certainly natural gas out there as well. So keep your eye out on those. They tend to come out as individual contracts. And we fund these typically with Navy Working Capital Fund, so that end of the year rush is generally not as true, so you may want to look for those all through the fiscal year there. A couple words about energy projects. Energy is one of the focus areas of certainly the President and the Secretary of the Navy. Secretary has set some ambitious goals for our installations, and we've got some funding along to help us meet those goals. These are Navy-wide numbers for the projects that would be classified as repair and maintenance. The Navy has set aside about $200 million a year throughout the Navy to perform that work. Chiller replacements, better insulation, windows replacements, EDC controls. So we'll see some of those. For ESIP, which are MILCON equivalent projects, about $25 million a year is in the Navy budget. And we have a goal of about $300 million a year in finance projects. So again, I just hit 4 really different types of projects there. The RME, or that maintenance, repair and maintenance energy, is typically repair projects, a couple $1 million each, put out, and they look exactly like construction projects, just have a slightly different focus than maintaining the facility. Instead, we're trying to fix the building with better technology, a better way of doing things. So those are rolling out throughout the year. The ESIP, which again is MILCON in scale, so it's new construction. Last couple of years, there's been a particular focus on renewable energy sources. that will probably be changing over the next couple of years, so it won't be as heavily focused on solar, wind, or geothermal. So those will be coming out. And then a very interesting aspect, Department of Defense is allowed to finance, essentially from the savings we'll receive, energy improvements. And there's two types there, an ESPC and a UESC. Essentially one gives the government guaranteed savings, and the other one is planned savings, so a little simpler to exercise than the negotiations that would be involved with a provider who's going to absolutely guarantee that we're going to receive that. The guaranteed is certainly nice for the government, and we will typically contract for O&M services for that contracted work at the same time. I encourage you to visit that energy.mil site there. A lot more information about the energy program at that one. So one of the things that we're doing in the Southeast, because there is so much interest in energy and so many people with great ideas, we host on about a quarterly basis a gathering at Jacksonville, generally publicized through the Society of American Military Engineers. If you'd like to come in, we allow a few presentations to keep the technical skills and make sure that at least our designers and engineers know what's happening in the industry now. But in particular, I wanted to mention the NAVFAC Engineering and Expeditionary Warfare Center. That will be the new name in a few days, but it's NAVFAC Engineering Service Center right now. That is where truly new technology would come in from the Navy. NAVFAC Southeast is not an R&D command. We don't do S&T or R&D, so we are not a test bed for new technologies. Certainly interested in reading about them. If we see you at a symposium, we'll talk about them. But please go to the Expeditionary Warfare Center if you want to propose something new that the Navy try out. But with the projects I mentioned, again, upwards of $500 million a year in facilities investment, there are certainly opportunities. And then very important, throughout our construction projects, energy and even better yet, life cycle cost of our facilities, both in the energy, which may be the most obvious, but also in the maintenance. We factor that into many of our solicitation and looking for your good ideas in that. So some of the projects that we have done with energy funding and focused on energy. And again, it's a wide variety. I wanted to just share. We have a fairly active retro commissioning, going back into a building, going through all the systems. Things may have changed during its use. It may be out of specifications. We go back in there and bring it up to current standards and make sure it's functioning as well as it could be kind of a tune-up for your control. We're putting in control systems where possible, lighting upgrades, HVAC upgrades, switching to LED lights, and performing audits on our building to prepare for future projects. All these must have a payback. So again, just because it's a neat idea and we engineers love it, it's got to actually have a payback that's worth investing taxpayer money on before we are willing to contract for it. In 13, more of the same, again, all over the AO. They tend to be, again, some smaller projects going into, for the most part, existing buildings and improving the energy efficiency of those facilities. Switching gears for a moment, and let me look over. Do we have any questions that I am confident to answer at the moment?
Yes, we do.
All right, live TV, this is high risk. We'll see what was just put in front of me as I read it on air. Will NAVFAC publish results of awards of open bid and or task order bids or MATOCs? Government agencies proactively publicize who was awarded the project, the amount of performance period, and sometimes the number of bids and awarding POCA data. Yes! Always nice to be able to answer that. In accordance with FAR Part 5.3, for all contract awards exceeding $25,000, we do publish at least some of the basic data, who got the award. Larger projects are also released through the Chief of Navy Information Office. Not a single design-build standalone contract in the list that excludes a significant segment of the industry. Why the reluctance to put a design-build contract out to contractors not on the map? Oh, I have my note, will be answered later. Probably should look ahead on that. Good question, and we have received that in a variety of forms, and certainly we'll answer that hopefully to your satisfaction. Please clarify distribution of design in place, DIP, for FY13 between in-house and A&E firms. FY13 in-house DIP projections are approximately 35%, so 35% of all work would be done in-house, and AE DIP are approximately 65%. The actual execution will vary, kind of like results for your gas mileage. And also remember there's the design bid build projects. So a lot of that is, design build projects. So a lot of that design is actually taking place in a construction contract. The MILCON forecast on the portal is rarely updated. Can you do a better job of that? We will certainly check with the headquarters. Of course, the MILCON, the president only submits that once a year to Congress. Once formally, there are some other avenues. So typically, that will only be updated once a year. Another project may come in if it's an unspecified minor construction or some other methodology, but that's only, the big update is only once a year. I understand that the carrier relocation, here's a loaded question, previously planned for May 4th is now on hold or scratched altogether. Could you please provide an update? Carrier relocation is handled at the SECNAV level. I believe the Secretary of the Navy has made some public announcements on that, and I would suggest you check the Navy.mil website. All the Secretary's speeches are posted there. All for the moment, and we do have more coming in. So again, if you've submitted questions, they will be answered. And good, I'm on environmental. So two aspects here. Environmental quality, for a layman that would be protecting what we have already and making sure we're complying with laws. And it's a whole spectrum of laws. Certainly clean water, clean air would be aspects of it. We have historic preservation concerns and all the various hazardous material and hazardous waste as well. And the NEPA program, the environmental planning. Restoration, you will often hear that referred to as EARN, Environmental Restoration, Navy. That is actually the name of the appropriation, and the MRP Munitions Response Plan. That's cleaning up things that have happened in the past. So these are fairly steady state programs as we comply with laws and clean up things from the past. So again, somewhat like the Public Works and the FSC I talked about, what you see in 12 and 13 will, in general, continue into the future. So let me hit a few of these here. And again, it's a great range of services. The individual dollar value is not typically large, but they happen everywhere all the time. We do a fair amount of work on BOAs, basic ordering agreement contracts. So that is one that if you're in the environmental business, you definitely want to keep an eye on. Those BOAs are refreshed on a very regular basis, often for small businesses. So keep an eye on that, a great opportunity on those BOAs. ETS is Environmental Technical Services. Again, we do some of that in-house. We have cultural resources, natural resources specialists here on staff, but we also contract out for that. Again, tend to be multi-year, 5-year contracts. And again, a whole range of items. Our timber program, for example, is managed in the environmental world. And again, very similar items in the FY13 to help ensure that we're in compliance with laws and regulations. So we need people who understand that on a global basis, and then particular to the various states that NAVFAC Southeast operates in. And we're able to provide at least a somewhat of a snapshot that look ahead into FY14 because these tend to remain fairly stable. And you certainly don't want me to read those to you. Asset management. Asset management is composed of several different aspects. Again, that real estate, and we do leases. We have something in excess of 1,000 leases a year out there, in grants and out grants of Navy property or properties that the United States Navy needs. And we perform surveys. So surveys are contracted out there. And the big one here is land purchases. If Congress or otherwise authorize the purchase of land or the right to use the land or protect the land for our compatible land use, we NAVFAC Southeast will make those real estate purchases. Planning, we continue with master planning and studies to support the Navy's mission, roll out of new platforms, new types of weapon systems, or new operations that the Navy needs to conduct. We work on the AQs, RAQs are parts of our planning process where we keep the citizens informed of what we're doing and how our operations may affect the surrounding communities, often done under professional service contract. We're responsible for maintaining the inventory of what the Navy and the Marine Corps owns. So surveys of our buildings, of our land, ensuring we understand our boundaries. So that's done under asset utilization. And then Congress has authorized public-private ventures, particularly in the housing world. So we help the region, Able Region Southeast, manage those public-private venture assets, typically long-term contracts to provide military family housing for our service members and their families. The real estate, in general, the number here reflects our purchase of land, so non-competitive and not covered by the FAR, I'll note, and then I will talk about a few of these others. So a fairly steady need for professional services to help us in our planning efforts and in those real estate acquisition. So multi-year contracts there with individual task orders depending on the project. Nearing the end, folks, maybe as good for me as for you. I wanted to speak briefly about small business. I had a caveat early on to be careful of the term small. It may or may not refer to actually a small business set aside or one of the variety of programs there. But I want to emphasize that NAVFAC in general, and certainly in the Southeast, we are looking at acquisitions on a case-by-case basis about how best to serve the needs of our supported commanders, their speed, the technical expertise they need, the funding available for a project, and then we make the acquisition decision based on that. Because we have many small business contractors out there who are capable, NAVFAC Southeast has been able to meet the goals set out by Congress and the President to support our small business community and the various groups of small business under the acts. And I think in part because of our geographic area, we have historically exceeded the goals set out. Here's a snapshot of that and the various programs that we have. But please keep abreast of all the acquisitions there. And even the small business ones, there's opportunities to partner, there's opportunities to mentor there, and you know, certainly the goal there is those small businesses graduate from the program and we grow in America a healthy industrial complex. So I want to finish and draw your attention to safety. We have talked about through the last hour and a half or so the great work we're doing, the benefits to the Navy and our operating forces. None of them in CONUS are worth somebody's life, either one of the 1,800 employees here at NAVFAC Southeast or any of our contract partners. And we are in a dangerous business in construction, and I would be remiss and it would go against my nature not to finish with safety. So let me draw your attention to this in particular. In all our solicitations, it doesn't matter if it's service or construction, safety is a standalone factor that's evaluated. Your safety record matters when we're evaluating your proposals. Do not lose sight of that, and I would suggest if your corporate culture does not reflect one of safety, you will have difficulty doing work for the United States Navy and certainly for NAVFAC Southeast. What we look at, I would summarize in these three areas. What is your record? Do you have a proven track record of success with your safety performance? One way that does that is the DART rate. What have you shown? What's your corporate history of keeping your workers, those Navy families that are on the same base, safe? And then what is your plan on my project? What's your accident prevention plan, or I would prefer mishap prevention plan, so that I've got confidence that work will be safe on your particular project. So we're going to look at that on each and every source selection. NAVFAC Southeast has been at the lead of NAVFAC in general on using factors in our selection process, in particular that for subcontractors. So we often look at contractors in NAVFAC. We also look at subcontractors. There are two particular requirements in our contracts, in our solicitation. One is experience modification rate of no greater than 1.1. So you be slightly above the industry average, but not much. And again, this is a competitive factor, particularly on the best value source selections, and that's one of the factors we're weighing. And then your DART rate not greater than 3. So look at those, see if you can compete. On our contracts, we utilize the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers EM 385. That is the construction safety requirements for our projects. So please be familiar with those. The 29 CFR is law, so that's watched also, but we use the 385 to manage the project and expect full compliance with the EM 385. Handy guide, Army Corps of Engineers publishes it and updates it, but understand how that works. And please make sure your subcontractors and every person out there understands the 385. Radiation safety, new requirements in the Navy on radiation safety. They're a little bit different, so I would encourage you to familiarize yourself and educate on radiation safety and how we enforce radiation safety and sources of radiation that are coming onto the base. We use that in many different aspects in the construction industry. We require the contractors to keep their safety plan updated, and then also, and finally, the EM 385, the United States Navy does not teach you how to comply with the 385, but the AGC, the American General Contractors, many colleges, university, and other safety organizations do offer classes in that. You may want to avail yourself of that. All right, by my watch, I've got no more than 20 minutes left, and hopefully we can get through another several rounds of questions here. And please, it will cut off at 1400 Eastern Time. Mickey's little hand on the 2, big hand on the 12. So if you've got more questions, please get those in the next 20 minutes. Can you provide an update as the status of Phase 1 solicitation for the Northeast Florida, Southeast Georgia Multiple Award Construction Contract, MAC, that was submitted on earlier this year? The Northeast Florida, South Georgia MAC is currently in Phase 1 evaluation. So we've received proposals and the government is evaluating those now. Another one on our MILCON seeds, or really I think it's on MAC seeds. MILCON is a specific appropriation. We will make sure we get that out to you. Again, I read them off quickly. They may be on the recording, but we'll type them up so you know which ones are going to be the seeds. I know there was a question also about will we be putting ones out in the future. I can say yes, they will be out in the future, but again, watch FedBizOps for those announcements. There it is. You know, will you be putting out IDIQs? We do acquisition planning on a regular basis at the command, and look for our needs out in the future on all sorts of types of work, and regularly we'll put out new contracting methods, MAX in particular. So yes, we do that on a revolving basis, and you will see ones pop out. Why is there a tendency toward design, bid, build and away from design, build? So design, bid, build, of course, where the government finishes 100% plans and specs and puts those out. Acquisition strategy selection is a dynamic decision based on many factors. Well, that's a good answer. Including, but not limited to, supported commander requests. Again, some of them would like to have a little more control early in the process. Number of solutions that can meet the requirements. So maybe a horizontal project versus a vertical building. The operational needs date and budget considerations. So what can our contractor partners, A&E partners contribute? Is that worth putting out as a design build project, or should it, if there's a very straightforward solution, maybe design bid build is a better way of doing it. And again, we evaluate these on a case-by-case basis, looking at the time frame, the customer needs, possible technical solutions, the permitting requirements, if it's beneficial for the government to get the permits up front, and a complete design is needed before we make the choice of the acquisition method. All right. Is the $300 million per year in finance, which was the UESC and ESPC energy projects, Navy-wide or just in the Southeast region? Those would be Navy-wide, so not just in the Southeast. Do you anticipate award option years, as in the past for large BOSS contracts? No, typically we will now do base plus 4 option years. So it's a 5-year contract. We'll award the base, and then based on a variety of factors, the government will decide whether to award each option 1 year at a time. And we've got one that'll be answered later, but we'll let you know for NAVFAC Southeast, BOA, Basic Ordering Agreement, and BPA, Blanket Purchase Agreement contracts. The IFB, Invitation for Bid, and RFP, Request for Proposal Dates, are listed as NA, not available. Are these BOA BPAs advertised on FedBiz Ops? If not, how does a small business or 8A firm get considered for these contract vehicles? And we will answer that one later. So excellent questions. You certainly want to know, what's coming up in the future, and we'll get you as much information on that future work. Again, not appropriated by Congress yet, and requirements certainly for the small projects can change through the year, so we cannot necessarily say in FY12 what our needs are going to be in future years. Actually, the system is working reasonably well. Do all major BOSS, base operating support contracts, have to be approved by Headquarters Navy? This will depend on the dollar value and the length of service. So we have different gates to go through depending on how large the contract is and how many years it's being solicited for. So those approvals sometimes do have to be done at a higher level above NAVFAC Southeast and CAP-QS. Are all planned acquisitions above $60 million planned to be full and open? So again, you're probably getting used to this answer. The acquisition strategy is based on the mission requirement and market research of that particular project. Pretty good general rule, though, that projects above $60 million, again, subject to the conditions at the time, would go out as standalone. What is the SCAN contract for energy audits? Now, SCAN is our specialty center for acquisitions in NAVFAC. They will do some of the specialized contracting. They're located out of Port Hueneme and will be part of that Expeditionary Warfare Center, that I mentioned earlier. They do some of the specialized contracts. Navy-wide, they have a contract for $300 million, set up as indefinite quantity AE services contract. Their current contract is with a partnership between Clark Nexton and CH2M Hill for energy work. And those energy audits are one of the things they put out under that Clark Nexton CH2M Hill contract. All right, here's the last one for the day. Hopefully it's a useful one. And again, get the last ones in, look for the recording. What is the best means to find a small business to partner with for federal contracts? So the Small Business Administration maintains a website, Internet knows everything, sba.gov/subnet, SUBNET. Locally, there are small business offices, including their Procurement Technical Assistance Contracts, excuse me as I look down, the Small Business Administration Office, and they have a Small Business Development Center. And I'm sure they hold local activities where you can meet your small business partner. Certainly there are trade and industry groups, a variety of them. And then at the NAVFAC website, www.navfac.mil, there are a variety of links to our small business office. So each of the, that's one of the places we'll say you can contract directly, NAVFAC headquarters, and each of these each of the FACs, Facilities Engineering Command like NAVFAC Southeast, has small business professionals who should be your points of contact into the small business, and certainly your chambers of commerce as well. And our small business folks go out to various forums hosted by the Small Business Administration, and technical groups hand out lots of business cards. So great point of contact, and that may be the one name that is actually listed on our solicitations. I had noticed several of the questions were related to particular procurements. I lied, there's more questions. To particular procurements, I would remind you, please contact the contracting officer for that contract. That's the voice of the U.S. government for that contract. So if you've got something, where are you in the procurement stage, something about your particular proposal, contact your contracting officer. And again, thank you for joining us. I hope this was useful. There will be a survey as you try and close out of this web conference, so please fill that out. I would encourage you to listen in. The schedule is on that web page to our other NAVFAC commands as they speak to you about this. Also, go back, listen to the recordings again, watch for in the next week or so all the typed answers to be posted there, and check back on our NAVFAC site, our NAVFAC website for additional information, certainly about these forums in the future. We look forward to seeing you at various trade shows, and certainly welcome your proposals in the future as we support the United States Navy. On behalf of Captain Kiewitz and Admiral Morton, thank you for joining us on the webinar. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. We off?